Greetings. I'm Buddy Ratner, professor of bioengineering and chemical engineering. And I've been asked to give you a sort of a brief description of one of our very interesting programs. And it's a pleasure to do that. And I'm going to switch to the share screen mode so I can show you some slides to illustrate some things about this program. Okay, well, hopefully you're viewing my screen now, and I'm going to go to presentation mode and talk about kidney dialysis. And I call this an imperative issue driving biomaterials and medical device thinking for the 21st century. And there's a lot that's encompassed in kidney dialysis, a lot of different technologies, and I think you'll maybe pick up on the excitement and the significance of this area. So, central focus in my group is medical devices. Here's just a bunch of nice illustrations of many different medical devices. But the one we're going to focus on is this procedure, kidney dialysis, taking the blood from a patient and cleaning it. And we'll talk in a good bit of detail about what's going on there. So we have this thing called end-stage kidney disease caused by diabetes, hypertension. There's a genetic propensity towards it. But the important thing is when your kidneys do shut down, sadly, you die within 3 weeks. There's simply no choice there. You can't get rid of the toxins in your blood. And both the prevalence and the incidence of kidney disease is increasing worldwide. And interestingly, kidney disease actually costs more than breast, lung, colon, and skin cancer combined. That's a surprising statistic. So let me start with a little bit of a sort of a historical introduction. It's, I'd call it a relatively modern technology. This man on the left, his name is Dr. Wilhelm Kolff, an MD. And Dr. Kolff, I took that picture of Dr. Kolff when he was 92, but when he was a young man, he was practicing medicine in Holland at the time the Nazis took over Holland. It's a very difficult time, but he saw his kidney patients when they came down with end-stage kidney failure. He simply had no means. There was nothing he could do to save them. And he had this idea that maybe he could dialyze the toxins and urea building up in the patient's blood, and built a dialysis system, which you can sort of see on the right. I got to know Dr. Kolff, and at one point he told this story. You see this picture of this woman on the bottom. This is the first human being in the history of the world who went into a coma from end-stage kidney failure, and nobody had ever come out of that coma before. If your kidney shut down or you went into this coma, you passed on to death in a few weeks. Well, this lady was on his dialysis machine for 72 hours and was the first person to come out of this coma. And Dr. Kolff tells the story when this woman, the first human on earth to come out of, to be saved from death by kidney disease, opened her eyes, and the first word she said is, "I'm going to divorce my husband." Now, maybe in such an important situation, you should say something more propitious, but that's what history records. In any event, the next incidents or the next advancements in that technology. Now, let me just say that the Dr. Kolff's technology could be used a few times, but he could not keep on dialyzing the patient. It's called chronic dialysis, and just couldn't do it, couldn't connect the patient enough times to the machine because of the major surgeries involved. And so the patients eventually died. He could not keep the patients alive for a long time, but proved this dialysis could work. Well, the next developments of importance happened right here at the University of Washington in the early 1960s. Our former chair, Dr. Wells Moulton, got a telephone call from an MD nephrologist in our medical school, Belding Scribner, and he was looking for a collaborator. And Belding Scribner suggested, hey, maybe Les Babb, who at that point was a young professor in our department, might be able to work with you on a project on kidney dialysis. And Dr. Scribner, along with Wayne Quinton, who was a bioengineer in the medical school, developed this shunt. You can see it on the arm of a patient in the lower left. And this particular shunt allowed ready access to the blood. But Dr. Les Babb's contribution, our chemical engineering department's contribution, was to build the machine that pumped the blood and controlled the dialysate and allow them to do the continuous dialysis. So you can sort of see what that machine looks like in the background. You can see Dr. Babb to the left. We have Dr. Belding Scribner in the center of this image, and Mr. Wayne Quinton, the bioengineer, on the right. And these three gentlemen transformed the world in that from their development, they developed a therapy that is now sustaining the life. Now, I have 2 million people there. Actually, I should have updated that to about 3.5 million people worldwide owe their lives to that very machine, or newer versions of that very machine developed in our chemical engineering department here. That development, the ability to keep a patient alive on dialysis, led in 1962 to the world's first artificial kidney center, opened in Seattle here. This plaque commemorates it. And so, you know, some 55, 60 years have passed since these pioneering efforts. Well, where are we and where will we go? So let me just add another little historical note. I did my PhD thesis on the interaction urea, in fact, mostly on transport of urea through hydrogel membranes. So I received my PhD in 1972. So I've been working on this, this subject a long time myself. So here's what kidney dialysis looks like pretty much from 2000 plus. Basically, we take the clean blood out of a patient's arm, put it through a dialyzer, dialyze against a large volume water, and return the blood cleaned of toxins back to the body. On the right, you can see what goes on in a dialysis clinic. The patient sits down in that chair. The dialysis session is controlled by that machine, including the dialysate and flow rates and such. And the patient sits there for 4 to 5 hours, 3 times a week. And of course, if they don't, basically they die. So in the first decade of the 21st century, the world, and that's 20 through 2020, excuse me, no, so 2000 to 2010, the first decade of the 21st century, the world had already spent greater than $2 trillion on dialysis. And so what's the problem now? Well, we have now, as I said, 3.5 million people worldwide. The problem for the patient is these 3 visits a week, 4 hours per session. To get the blood, they get painful, disfiguring needle sticks. Imagine you have 2 large diameter needles stuck into your arm 3 times a week for the rest of your life. Clotting, infection, blood clotting, infection. After this dialysis, well, they actually don't feel very well. They feel very poorly. They have headaches, cramps, disorientation. And, these days we might say dialysis centers also increase the COVID risk. You're in a room, fairly close quarters, because we need those dialysis machines. We can't separate them out too far. Fairly close quarters with other patients. And that patient, after they start dialysis, has a 4 to 5 year life expectancy. And this system is expensive. 1% of the entire US budget is spent on dialysis, 1% of the entire budget. Water consumptive, energy, environment unfriendly, I'll tell you about in a second. And as I said, patients just hate this treatment. So the environmental effects of this dialysis, we're using about 129 billion liters of water per year to dialyze patients. That would be sort of a cube of water about as tall as the Petronas Towers in Kuala Lumpur. Huge amounts of energy, huge amounts of waste, and part of that waste is polyvinyl chloride tubing. We use about 2 million miles of polyvinyl tubing that's just disposed after each session. And that incidentally is about enough to go about 3.5 times from the Earth to the moon. And we just toss it into the waste. So what are the sort of issues we're dealing with in trying to improve dialysis? Well, there's how do we get blood access? How do we deal with hyperplasia, which is the damage to blood vessels and doing that blood access, clotting, infection, membrane fouling? These are all classic biomaterials problems. Well, sort of our predicate for how we might address this is the left ventricular assist device, sometimes called the artificial heart. And if you looked at this device in 1993, it was a huge device controlled by a huge control panel and pumping system. By 2007, it had been reduced to a rollaway. And today, there's just a small strap-on that a patient can take out and kind of enjoy their life while still having this heart support in this device. This is our predicate that's letting us know we can do better. Well, in 2015, the first clinical trial of a wearable artificial kidney happened right here again at the University of Washington. We've been sort of the epicenter in the world for developing kidney technologies. And the person on the left is Dr. Jonathan Himmelfarb, Professor Himmelfarb, an MD nephrologist. In the center is an inventor. His name is Victor Gura. On the right is a professor in our Department of Global Health, Department of Global Health. His name is Professor Larry Kessler. And these three put on this clinical trial of this device invented by Victor Gura in the center, wearable artificial kidney. So you can see kind of what it looks like. It was actually pretty crude device. These are the parts of it. And in fact, the belt holding the whole thing together was actually bought at a Home Depot. It's kind of low tech that way. Well, this is what it looked like on a patient. The young lady on the right is just thrilled in comparison actually to her mother, who was on conventional dialysis to the left. Now, the only problem with this great idea is it didn't work. The clinical trial had to be stopped after 8 hours with concerns for risk to the patient in how poorly it was doing. So that kind of stimulated us to do something better. And also we'd started dealing with patients. We had a patient group on dialysis to find out what patients like. We call it patient-centric engineering. And one of our patients said, this is ridiculous. We need to find a better way to do dialysis. So in 2017, we launched what we call the Center for Dialysis Innovation, and with funding from the Northwest Kidney Centers, a nonprofit in Seattle that provides kidney dialysis services. This is kind of our launch ceremony. Dr. Himmelfarb is talking at the microphone, and off to the right, the tall gentleman is the dean of our School of Medicine. And part of our philosophy and what we're going to do better is your kidneys work 24/7. How can we expect 3-4 hour dialysis treatments to emulate the natural kidney? Your toxins go up, they crash down. It's just not physiologic. So we started envisioning something like this, a kidney device that allows the patient freedom. And to do this, there are just a whole bunch of components that simply have to come together. We need improved membranes. We need improved sensors and measurement. Infection, bacterium biofilms we have to address. We have to address blood access. We have to address blood compatibility. There's a number of aspects of device design and engineering that have to come together. And all these have to be translated from the lab to the clinic and finally to commercialization. We literally have to rethink every component of dialysis systems today. And so there's a lot of ChemE contributions to this program. Professor Xiaoyi Zhang, who unfortunately just recently left for Cornell, decided to go to a lesser school, but good luck, Xiaoyi. Xiaoyi was working with us on non-fouling membranes with appropriate transport rates. Professor Eric Stuve in our department is working on how to eliminate the 15 grams of urea per day your body produces. Our chair, Jim Fentner, is modeling transport properties and molecular interactions. My own group, we're doing blood interactions, looking in particular at wall shear rates and their effect on blood and blood access. So one of our technologies, we're even envisioning potentially doing a portable dialysis system, maybe before the wearable dialysis system. And in this portable dialysis system, we want, instead of dialyzing in large quantities of water, we want to convert the urea to nitrogen and CO2 by catalysis. And this is a paper from Professor Bruce Hines, supported by our Center for Dialysis Innovation, on using a titanium dioxide urea photodecomposition system to regenerate the dialysate solution. We've also developed with chemical engineering PhD student Lizen, recently graduated from ChemE, is now Dr. Lizen, and Dr. Zen is working with us still on the program. And we won for a new kind of dialysis access graft, a Kidney X phase 2 prize. This is a prize from the US Health and Human Services and from the American Society of Nephrology. $500,000 prize that's going to continue to help us support further developments in kidney dialysis. So these are just a short sampling of some of the exciting technologies that are going on right now in our Center for Dialysis Innovation. And I'm going to finish up with this slide. Here's another nice picture of Belding Scribner, the MD who envisioned the first chronic dialysis, and a picture again of his shunt that he developed all the way back in 1993. And Belding Scribner said then, if the treatment of chronic uremia, kidney failure, cannot fully rehabilitate the patient, treatment is inadequate. Well, that was in 1963, and today we can still say the same thing. But I think our Center for Dialysis Innovation is leading us on to portable and wearable dialysis forms that will dialyze patients for longer periods of time, giving the patient much greater satisfaction, life satisfaction, and also better therapy at much lower cost. That's where we're going. And I look forward to further discussing projects with the center that might relate to the Center for Dialysis Innovation with incoming ChemE students. In the meantime, you're coming into a great ChemE department. So I wish you a number of years of success and good luck on your thesis projects. Thanks again. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And again, say goodbye to you and wish you good luck.